Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Just Trying to Survive and Learn to Love Along the Way. This will be Part 22, Chapters 42 and 43. Chapter 42 of Quick Fights and a Rescue Attempt. Aw, how sweet. Both my targets in one place. Katsuki turns and finds a masked villain exiting the forest. He makes eye contact with Izuku, and the other boy nods. They both leap towards the guy. Surely, with Katsuki's powerful explosions and Deku's shitty quirk, they can take him. Deku's kick makes contact mere seconds before his explosion does. When the smoke clears, Katsuki can't help the intake of breath. The spot he knows he hit with his explosion is unmarred. He turns his gaze to Izuku, whose wide eyes and gaping mouth reveal his surprise. His kick was stopped mid-air by a giant hand. The villain took his explosion and stopped Deku's quirk at nearly full power with no problem. What the fuck? Katsuki watches as the villain closes his hand around Deku's foot. He has no time to block as the man pulls him into the air and uses him as a weapon on Katsuki. Unlike that time with All Might, the man doesn't let go. After Katsuki is knocked aside, he raises his fist, holding Deku upside down. The man's giant stature has him dangling several feet off the ground, and he looks as dazed as Katsuki feels. There's red blocking his vision, so Katsuki wipes at his eye and finds blood. It's leaking from a cut above his eyebrow. He looks up at Deku and finds a similar wound on his face from where their heads had made contact. Katsuki scrambles to his feet and raises his hands. Maybe if he makes a big enough explosion, the freak will drop Deku, or the noise will get someone's attention. Either of those would be fucking fine with him. Don't even think about it, kid. One explosion and I break his leg. Katsuki doubts that. His palms begin sparking, preparing for a huge fucking blast, when shitty Deku's cry stops him. Kachan! His face is alarmingly pale, and there are a few tears already running down his forehead. The giant has a tight grip on his foot, and he doesn't seem to be in any hurry to let go. Fuck. The villain is grinning at him, smile growing at the small whimpers of pain that Izuku is making. Katsuki slowly raises his hands in surrender, and the man loosens his fist and lowers Deku to the ground. He doesn't let go. Instead, he gestures for Katsuki to walk ahead of him and starts dragging Deku behind him. He's reluctantly concerned about their situation right now. He feels so fucking useless. If he tries anything, who knows what that fucker will do to shitty Deku. They're deep in the forest by now, little to no chance of somebody stumbling upon them. A big hand grabs him by the back of the head and Katsuki freezes. He looks up and meets the eyes of Yaoyorozu and Todoroki. Step aside, unless you want to die. I'm only after these two, although I don't mind killing a few kids. Katsuki tries to shake his head at them. There's nothing they can do at this point, besides create a bigger mess. I'm afraid that's not an option. Fucking half-and-half bastard. All right, then. I'll try to make it quick, little hero. Katsuki is suddenly weightless, and he feels himself collide with a tree before there's nothing to feel at all. Momo reunited with Todoroki a few minutes before they hear the explosions. They sound an awful lot like Bakugo's quirk. Why in the world would he be using that while they should be evacuating the forest? Unless the fire is because of villains and Bakugo is confronting them. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Of course the explosion boy would go looking for the attackers. He's smart enough to come to the villain conclusion on his own, but dumb enough to go looking for them instead of finding a pro-hero. She shares a look with Todoroki before heading towards the sound. What kind of classmates would they be if they didn't help out? There are no more explosions to guide them, so Momo leads them in the direction she thinks they came from, hoping that Bakugo didn't stray too far off. They run into someone sooner than she thought they would. Momo watches, mildly horrified, as a villain she recognizes as Muscular brings a huge hand to hold the back of Bakugo's head. His eyes are wide, and Momo stumbles back a step when she recognizes Midoriya being dragged behind the man. He looks half-conscious, face screwed in pain. "Step aside, unless you want to die. I'm only after these two, although I really don't mind killing a few kids." Momo is terrified, but she knows they can't abandon their friends. Well, their friend and Bakugo. She knows how close Todoroki and Midoriya have gotten, but neither of them are particularly fond of Bakugo. "I'm afraid that's not an option." Todoroki speaks up before she can, and takes a step towards the trio. "All right then, I'll try to make it quick, little hero." Muscular tosses Midoriya to one side, and throws Bakugo to the other. The explosive boy smacks into a tree and falls to the ground limp. Todoroki takes a step forward, and Momo takes a step back. No matter how confident she feels after her final exam, there is absolutely no way she can go up against Muscular. At this point, all she'll do is get in Todoroki's way. The boy in question is using his ice, trying to trap the villain in as tight a spot as he can. It would work if it weren't for Muscular's strength augmentation. The man is crushing the ice as quickly as Todoroki is forming it. At the rate they're going, her friend will soon run out of stamina. Looks like Todoroki came to the same conclusion. He rapidly switches to his fire, and Muscular gives him a quick look of confusion before blocking his face with meaty arms. Todoroki lowers his arm and staggers back. Muscular is unscathed and grinning at him. There is absolutely no way they can win this. Not unless one of them suddenly develops a strength quirk. They need to back down, unless they want to die. Either way, Muscular is leaving with their classmates. Momo glances towards Bakugo. He's still out cold, and probably will be for a while. Midoriya, however, seems somewhat lucid. She sneaks over to his side, skimming her memory for the item she needs. She produces it as she kneels beside Midoriya. "Here, eat this." Her friend just gives her a confused look. "It's a tracker. This way we'll know where they take you, and the pros can rescue you quickly." Midoriya's eyes widen in understanding, and he reaches a shaking hand towards her. Momo deposits the tracker in his palm, and he shoves it in his mouth quickly, obviously not wanting to be caught. She looks to the scene behind her and frowns. Muscular is steadily advancing on Todoroki, his fire doing practically nothing to slow him down. He switches back to ice, but the villain just smashes through every wall he makes. Momo creeps back to the other side of the clearing, back towards where she'd been standing before. She gets there just as Muscular breaks through the last ice wall, and she watches in horror as he brings a clenched fist down on Todoroki's head. He drops to the ground, and Momo can't tell if he's conscious or not. Taking a deep breath, she rushes forward, putting herself between Todoroki and Muscular, just as he raises his fist again. "Wait!" Surprisingly, he does. "Please, just let us go. We won't fight you anymore. You're far too strong." Hopefully, flattery will work. That's the only way they're getting out of this alive. Muscular grins at her, and slowly lowers his fist. "All right, little heroes. I believe today's your lucky day. Now get the fuck out of here before I change my mind." Ignoring her instinct to keep facing the villain, Momo turns around and yanks Todoroki to his feet. He's semi-conscious, in a state similar to the one Midoriya had been in. She drags him back into the trees and pauses when they're just out of Muscular's sight. Momo carefully puts Todoroki down against a tree and creeps forward for a better look at the clearing. Muscular has Midoriya back in hand, and he's just reaching towards Bakugo to pick him up too. Another figure steps into the clearing, and it's a villain she doesn't recognize. He's got a tall hat and a mask, and he's wearing a simple suit. He looks like a knockoff magician. Muscular. So glad I ran into you. Compress. Muscular looks displeased, and the villain steps closer to him despite the scowl on his face. Looks like we'll have to leave Dabi. Killed some kid, then got caught himself, the idiot. Muscular grins, a scary glint in his eye as he answers. Good. He turns and steps into the trees, not stopping once to see if Compress is following him. As soon as they're gone, Momo turns back to Todoroki and helps him stand. They have to get back to the cabins and tell Aizawa-sensei what happened. She's hoping that everyone else is okay. But if what the villain said is true, that means that one of her classmates is dead. She picks up her pace at the thought. She's just exiting the forest when they run into their teacher, and she breathes a sigh of relief. Yaoyorozu, are you two all right? We're mostly okay, Sensei. Good. Have you seen Izuku and Bakugo? They're the only two students unaccounted for. We're also missing Ragdoll. About that. The villains took them. Todoroki tried to help them, but Muscular almost killed him, so we had to get out of there. Momo frowns. A pro-hero is missing too. Why were they all kidnapped? Fuck. Aizawa-sensei looks devastated. She's never seen her teacher show this much emotion before. I actually have something that might help. She pulls up her sleeve and produces a small device, the other part of the tracker that will lead them to Midoriya. Aizawa-sensei takes the device and looks relieved for a moment before a serious look is back on his face. Good work, Yaoyorozu. Your quick thinking might have saved their lives. Now follow me. Momo flushes at the praise, and their teacher gives her head a light pat before turning away. He's leading them towards the cabins, where a few ambulances are just arriving. The rest of the pussycats are moving around the injured students, helping those who are worse off. Momo and Todoroki sit down next to Mina, and she has hardly any time to take in the tears in the other girl's eyes before she's throwing herself at Momo. A quiet sob sounding the moment she wraps her arms around her. Hey, Todoroki. She speaks quietly, not wanting to bother the other students, but she also needs to be heard over the crying of her friend. He turns towards her, tilting his head in silent acknowledgement. Why did Aizawa-sensei react like that? Todoroki eyes her for a moment, before answering. Izuku is his son. Shit. Chapter 43 of Musings and a Familiar Face. Izuku never really loses consciousness. He's just been in this haze of pain, the throbbing in his head from his collision with Kachan, and the ache in his leg locked in a battle for dominance. There's no clear winner. He vaguely registers when he's tossed aside by the villain. He thinks he hears Shoto's voice, but that may be a creation of his most likely concussed brain. The next thing he registers is Yaoyorozu kneeling before him, telling him to eat a tracker. There's a moment of clarity there, where he can see the worry on her face, and that really is Shoto behind her. Izuku does as she says and swallows the tracker. The next thing he knows, he's being grabbed again, and a glance to his right shows Kachan in a similar position. He has fresh blood running down his face, and his eyes are closed. Izuku looks around the clearing and finds no sign of Yaoyorozu or Shoto. Did the villain kill them? No, Izuku doesn't think so. There'd have to be some evidence left behind, and he sees nothing, although who knows how much he can trust his blurry vision. A pair of feet walk by and he flinches. It's not much of a movement in his state. Izuku tries to listen to what they're saying, but it's tough to understand. Everything is muted. Everything but the pain. All he can hear is something about a kid dying, before he loses focus again. Someone died? There's a 50-50 chance that it was someone from his class. If it's a kid, then at least it's not his dad. Izuku feels a pang of guilt at the thought, but it's hard not to be relieved at knowing one of the people he cares for the most is safe. He knows for sure that it wasn't Kacchan, Yaoyorozu, or Shoto. That leaves 16 classmates unaccounted for, plus all of Class 1B. His vision goes dark, and Izuku fears that he passed out. The fear only lasts until he realizes that it's a dark purple, not black, that he's seeing. The mist surrounding them is familiar, and when it clears away, they're in a completely different place. It looks like a bar, or at least it looks like what Izuku thinks a bar would look like. He's never been in one, so he can't be too sure. His leg is dropped, and he feels a brief sense of freedom. Brief because as soon as his foot hits the floor, his arm is grabbed, and he's yanked into a somewhat upright position. He tips to the side, and instead of letting him hit the floor, someone redirects his fall, and he lands in an uncomfortable chair instead. He'd almost rather the floor. His arms are pulled forwards and tied together, before his legs are tied to the chair. Izuku looks around, trying to find Kacchan, and finds him without much effort. He's sitting only a few feet away on Izuku's right, tied up in an identical fashion. A slap to the face redirects his attention. "Are you even fucking listening?" Oh. Izuku had vaguely registered them talking, but he didn't notice when they stopped talking to each other and started talking at him instead. He looks around to the other villains in the room and fails to recognize any of them. A hand roughly grabs his chin and yanks his face forwards. Oh, now there's a villain he recognizes. There's a hand covering his face again, but Izuku can still see his eyes through the gaps between his fingers, and they look angry. He can feel the pressure of his thumb and 3 fingers on his chin. He has no clue where the other finger is. He can only hope that it's sitting as far away as possible. "Got that, you little shit?" Izuku shakes his head. He should really start paying attention. Shigaraki tightens his hand, and Izuku can't help his wince. "I said that a very special guest is coming soon. I'm sure you've heard of him. So you better be on your best behavior, or we might do something to your little friend over there. Now let me repeat the question. You got that, you little shit?" Izuku nods as much as he can with the hand holding his face, and he finally lets him go. Shigaraki opens his mouth to say something more, but whatever he had to say is cut off by a groan from Izuku's right. He looks over and finds Kacchan blinking quickly before he raises his head to look around. He meets Izuku's eyes, and they widen a fraction. They've been enemies for so long that Izuku can't tell what that look on his face means. The blood on Kacchan's face makes him look even paler, and he still looks a little out of it as he stares at Izuku. "Well, well, well. Look who's finally awake." Shigaraki walks away from Izuku. However, he finds it hard to feel relieved, as the man is now standing in front of Kacchan. "The fuck do you want with us?" Everyone in the room tenses when Kacchan speaks, but Shigaraki lets out a laugh. "I knew I liked you, kid. Why don't you join us? Those damn heroes will never understand you. With your explosive personality and that mouth of yours, you'll fit in much better with the League." Izuku laughs. He doesn't mean to, it just sort of slips out. All heads twist towards him, and Izuku is once again the center of attention. Kacchan is gaping at him, a look of shock on his face. He wishes his hands weren't bound as they were. Sign language would be useful right about now. "Well, clearly you've never met Kacchan. He's always wanted to be the #1 hero, so why would he join the villains?" Izuku is silently praising himself for making it through the sentence. Shigaraki starts laughing again. He goes on for long enough that the others join in. "Shut the fuck up!" Surprisingly, everyone does. They all turn their glares back on Kacchan. "The shitty nerd is right. Why the fuck would I join you assholes when I'm going to be the #1 hero? You can all fuck right off." Kacchan is smirking, clearly pleased with himself. The smirk is wiped right off his face when Shigaraki punches him. He then proceeds to shove a rag in Kacchan's mouth before stepping away from him. "I'll deal with you later. For now, I've got business with the other kid. The boss'll be here soon, and I've got to make sure he's ready for his big performance." Shigaraki walks towards him, and Izuku can't help but to slouch down in the chair, trying to make himself as small as possible. He looks over, and the wide-eyed look that Kacchan is giving him doesn't help in the least bit. "Now, the boss only wants one thing from you. Then maybe he'll even let you free after." The excitement in Shigaraki's voice makes Izuku think that that's not the case. The man is silent, clearly waiting for Izuku to respond. What does he want?" His stuttering is getting worse as his fear grows. It's a miracle anyone can understand him at this point. Shigaraki crouches in front of him and grips his chin again, waiting until Izuku meets his eyes before speaking. "Your quirk." Izuku sucks in a breath. Could it be? Is All for One really still out there? Hot tears start running down his face, and Izuku doesn't even try to stop them. He flinches when Shigaraki lifts his other hand to his face, but it's not like he can move very far. A few of the man's fingers brush his cheek in an almost gentle gesture, wiping away his tears. "Aw, no need for tears, little hero. There's a chance you'll even survive the process, though the boss isn't known for being very careful when going after what he wants." Shigaraki stands and backs away a few steps before speaking again. "Now, the time is here. You just have to be a good little boy and give the man your quirk." He reaches a door by the bar and opens it slowly, revealing a man standing behind. The man is wearing a simple suit, but that's where the normalcy ends. There are tubes sticking out from his neck and a mask covering his face. He's terrifying. Shigaraki opens his mouth again, and the words that Izuku least wanted to hear but most expected come out of the man's mouth. "Welcome, All for One." All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 43 of Just Trying to Survive and Learn to Love Along the Way. Chapter 44 will be up next. I'd love to hear your all's reactions to everything so far, these most recent 2 chapters, as well as the entirety of the fic to this point. Also, maybe predictions that you have for what's coming around the corner. So drop your comments below for me. Just a reminder, the fic is, of course, located over on AO3, so you can always slide over, leaving comments, kudos, and support to the original author as well. I'm sure it's much appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.